All right, Dr. Shake Chatterjee, welcome to In the Vet's Office. We are happy to have you here today.
Very happy to be here. Thank you, Josie.
You're welcome. I just read an article that says you are saving puppies by day and dropping beats by night as a DJ. How is life going for you? Are you still practicing?
I am practicing full time. I work in urgent care at a couple different clinics, but mainly one. But um, here and there, picking up shifts here in Miami.
You're in Miami, so you're not practicing in Chicago anymore.
No, I moved to Miami about 2.5 years ago.
That probably suits your DJ lifestyle a little bit better.
Yeah, it did in the beginning, but I think I just got a little bit older and just got a little bit busier with other things. So in Chicago, I used to DJ just about every weekend, but that was in my 20s and I guess very beginning of my 30s. Um, in Miami, I still DJ probably once a month or every other month, but it's definitely not how it used to be. I don't have the same energy for that as I used to.
I get that, especially if you're practicing and doing urgent care. I mean, that can be pretty exhausting. So finding the time to be a vet and DJ, I'm sure, is not easy.
My schedule's actually really awesome now.
Okay.
So I work Monday through Wednesday, and it's a 12-hour shift. So, and I have 4 days off. So, it's really nice. I think it really just comes down to my my energy level. It's just I don't have that same drive to go out and do it as much.
And drop
Um,
beats.
I mean, I love it, but right now it's more I wait for the right opportunities. I say no more than I say yes.
That sounds fair. And when you say urgent care, just for the listeners, I think most people have a pretty good understanding of what general practice is like and then what the ER is like. How would you explain urgent care?
Yeah, so the location I work at mainly during the day we do a lot of general practice stuff, but then we're open a little bit later than most GPs. We're open till 10 or 11. So a lot of times people come home from work and they see something's wrong with their dog, and their regular vet might be closed. The ER, it might not be as severe of a case that needs to go to an ER. We're open late, and we see a lot of those cases. That being said, we do get the hit by cars and things like that too, and we focus mainly on stabilizing them and then transfer them to a 24-hour facility if needed.
Yeah, I think that's great for listeners to hear because there are a lot more urgent cares popping up all over the country. And a lot of times, urgent cares can take care of like ear infections, urinary tract infections, things that don't require them to be hospitalized or go to surgery. And so if you are listening and you live in a major city, you probably have an urgent care by you. And if you feel like, hey, my pet needs to be seen, it's 9 o'clock at night, I don't think it's a dire emergency where they're going to need to be hospitalized or need surgery. Going to an urgent care is probably your best option.
Yeah, and as far as those listening that are in vet school or thinking about being a vet, I've really enjoyed the urgent care lifestyle. So it's kind of a perfect balance of the GP stuff where I still form relationships with the clients and I have my repeat clients, but then there's the little bit of anything can happen, which makes it interesting.
Yeah, keeps you
And
guessing.
yeah, exactly. And so as far as my surgery skills and just my skills for more uh, advanced diagnostics and things like that, those are staying sharp because again, you never know what you're going to get, and you get a lot of cool opportunities.
What are some of the craziest things you've seen working urgent care?
I mean, the hit by cars are always stressful and
Yes.
I don't want to say exciting, but they get the blood flowing, that's for sure. But one of the interesting things about Florida is there's a lot of toad toxicities here.
Toad.
In Chicago, yeah, toad, like poison toad.
Wow.
So in Chicago, that's not a thing at all. So that was completely new to me. But it kind of seems to happen more when it's just rained and the toads are kind of out hopping around, and then we'll have like a rush of like three, four pets coming in. Dogs lick these toads, and depending on how long they had the toad in their mouth, or just how much of the toad they licked, they can get pretty sick from that. So they start foaming at the mouth, their gums turn bright red, they can have seizures, lots of central nervous issues. They can even go into to like a stupor or even like a coma. So it's definitely a thing that I've learned to identify quickly, decontaminate the mouth, flush out the mouth. One pro tip for anybody who might have this come in. So it's not just flushing of the mouth. So what happens is the toxin is kind of on the gums and in the mouth. So what you want to do is take like a damp cloth or something, and really wipe away the toxin. And then beyond that, it's putting them on fluids, and if they're having seizures, managing the seizures and that type of thing.
They did not teach us that in vet school, probably because I was in Ohio, but I did not know. Maybe they did teach me. Sorry, professors, if you did. I missed that, I guess. But I did not know that that was a thing. Very interesting. And it's just from
Yeah, I mean, like I
licking
said,
them, not eating them, licking
yeah.
them.
Well, if they eat them,
You're in big
it could
trouble.
potentially be worse because the toxins are in there.
Right.
But it's really the oral mucosa that does a lot of absorbing
Do
in the beginning.
they know if, because we know with like windshield wiper fluid that it tastes sweet to them, does the slime on the toad taste good to dogs? Like, why are they licking toads?
Why are they licking toads?
Yes. Like, I'm wondering if they think it tastes good.
I think it's because of the prey instinct. They just see this thing hopping around and
I
mean, they're
guess.
like, hey, what's that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a dog is more likely to lick a toad than, in my mind anyway, drink like antifreeze or something. Like,
True.
here's this funny smelling liquid versus like a little thing that's hopping, and
Right.
dogs want to catch things that are hopping around. So
That's
it's like
fair.
chasing after a squirrel, except the squirrel poisons you.
How terrible. Thank God squirrels aren't poisonous. My dogs would be in big trouble. So, one of the big questions I had for you is, what was it like coming off Love is Blind or The Villains and going back into practice? I don't think it's like any secret that you weren't at the top of everyone's nice list coming off these shows. Were like clients, did they recognize you? Did anyone say anything? How was that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I just opened up about this really recently. It's something I didn't really feel like talking about when I was going through it.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as the show came out, and I kind of became this villain, and let me also say, these shows, they edit you to make you look a certain way. Everybody kind of has this idea in the back of their mind that that happens, but it's not until you go through it that you realize like just how much they can twist things and take things out of context and so on and so forth. So not only was I the villain, but um, I I wasn't able to talk about what happened because we had signed all these contracts say, hey, whatever comes out on the show, like you have to go along with it. And if you speak out against it, they're like, we're going to sue you and blah blah blah. So I not only could I speak out against it, but also I didn't even feel like people wanted me to apologize, and I'm like, I'm not going to apologize. I didn't do anything. You know what I mean? Like the show made me look a certain way. I'm not going to apologize for something I didn't do, or to the extent that it was portrayed, and that made people even more mad because I'm like unapologetic about it. So what happened is the clinic that I worked at in Chicago got review bombed by strangers on the internet,
Really?
and I got let go. So this happened within 2 months of the show coming out. So I didn't get to even experience much of clients recognizing me or anything. It was a corporate practice, and one of the big corporations. I don't want to say who it was, but it was one of the big corporations, and first they put me on like a leave, like a paid leave, And I was like, all right, sweet. I'm just going to go to Miami then, I guess, and just like hang out during this paid leave. But obviously, I didn't have a good feeling about it. I'm like, why am I being put on this paid leave? And I remember I was at the pool one day, and I get a call from uh, I guess one of the HR people, or somebody higher up in the corporate, and they like basically told me like, hey, we're what do they call it? An involuntary separation. I'm like, okay, that's a fancy way of saying I'm fired because of these
The reality
reviews.
show.
And,
Yeah.
and and I can't blame them. I can't be mad at the corporation even, because who would want that? You know,
That brings up
it's not good for business.
Yeah, that brings up a really interesting point that I think about a lot, and vet med especially, is how dependent these clinics are on reviews, customer reviews on Google and Yelp. I feel like I know that when I owned a practice, I checked them every single day. And bad reviews
Yeah.
are really detrimental for business. I don't know that other healthcare providers have that same, that they worry about them as much as we do.
Not to the same extent. I mean, I think reviews are important for most industries, but some industries, like you said, rely on them and focus on them a lot more. Um, but it worked out really great for me in the long run, because I had gotten this really big signing bonus, just like maybe it was like 6 months before the show came out, like big big signing bonus. Like I didn't even. This was like around COVID time when vets were like really in demand. So like close to a year's salary type of signing bonus. And I was like, okay, well, what happens with the signing bonus then? Like, I didn't leave.
Right.
You're telling me to leave, and they're like, oh, you're gonna have to give it back. And I was just like, I can't. Like, I spent it. I just said I spent it. Like, and then ultimately, I had a lawyer review everything and send them a letter. And my lawyer said, just don't pay them back. And if they'll want to do something, they'll do something. And they didn't do anything. So I took that sign-on bonus, and I was loving Miami so much that I was like, you know what? I'm
Stay
just gonna
here.
move down here.
Stay here.
So I had a little period there where thankfully I didn't have to work because of this nice bonus that
Mm-hmm.
I had. So I had a lot of fun, and frankly, I just started missing being in practice, because that's that was my whole life, really. I mean, yeah, I was a DJ too and had my fun things, but we go to a lot of school. I mean, being a vet is more than just a profession for most of us, right? It's
Yeah.
something that
It's a
it
calling.
is like a part of it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, you know what? Let me get my Florida license, and the demand for vets down here is just as high as everywhere else in the country, right? So, um, and I had never worked in this urgent care environment before, so I didn't realize how much I was going to like that. The pay is better too as an urgent care vet, because not everybody wants to work those long hours,
Mm-hmm.
But if they find somebody that will,
Do you
you
have
get
clients down
decent
there
compensation.
that recognize you from TV?
Oh, that's the other thing. While people in Chicago were like shunning me,
Mm-hmm.
Miami just welcomed me with open arms. They just loved me down here, and I even felt that before I started working down here. I just felt it socially, because my season of Love Is Blind was filmed in Chicago. I was the villain. Um, a lot of people switched up on me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people that knew me switched up on me, and I was like, all right, this is bull. And then I come down to Miami, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my God, we love you! Like, come to this yacht party, come to this penthouse party." And I was like, "This is where I belong." Miami's my kind of place. So
It seems
really,
it seems
it
like
all
you're
worked out really.
handling it pretty well, like being labeled a villain. I would say that veterinarians, just inherently, we are kind of people pleasers for the most part. Do you feel like at any point where you're like, wow, this sucks, like I wish I had never gone on this show? Or are you just like, this is it, this is what it is?
No, actually, I never for a second thought that, because the hate and most of that was all online.
Hmm.
In person is a whole different story. You know, you're like the man of the hour, and especially here in Miami, even though some of this was editing and portrayal, even that negatively portrayed version of me, they loved that here in Miami. They loved it, you
They're
know.
like, come on
Um,
down.
yeah, yeah. So I was getting a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten. Met a lot of people that I otherwise wouldn't have met, and really, it's like a huge, huge net positive. But you bring up a good point because I don't think many people could handle what I went through. Frankly,
I would
I
die.
really don't.
I would certainly, I
I,
know I
and
wouldn't.
my parents took it a lot harder than me. Because me, like, they're seeing all this negative stuff. They're seeing the articles and blah blah blah. But like, they're not experiencing like the awesome, fun stuff that I'm doing, right? Like, they're not seeing like the positive stuff.
They don't get to go to
And
Miami and drop beats and be welcomed with open arms.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, no, overall, it's been great. And then, I started leaning into it a little bit. I was like, all right, I'll be your villain. I could be your villain. Like, why not have fun with it at this point? At some point, you figure out what people believe is not going to change, based on what you say. So just have fun with it at this point.
Yeah.
And 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 I was also just lucky again going back to being a vet. I lost my job, but nobody can take my career. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, yeah, I lost that opportunity, but I have a degree and I'm good at what I do. So, no matter what, like, I knew I'd land on my feet. I think not being a vet, somebody was in my shoes, I think it might be tougher,
Yeah,
you know?
that is interesting where it's like, as a viewer or anybody sitting behind a screen, we can watch reality TV and we forget like these are real people with real jobs and like you said, yes, you're so lucky you have a career because you do have that degree, but man, those people that don't, I mean, I can't imagine coming out and losing your job. It could be very detrimental.
Yeah, yeah, that happened to one of my castmates. And the irony is, so show like Love is Blind, you have all these people that before the show airs, you're just an everyday person. And all of a sudden, you're somebody. Even if it's for just the 15 minutes of fame, like all of a sudden you're somebody. And people were desperate to keep that image. And for that reason, they found it very easy to turn on me, even though my castmates knew who I was. They saw me as, all right, everybody hates this guy. We can't associate with him. We can't defend him, because all of a sudden they've had a taste of this, like, being a special person and being in the public's eye, and they didn't want to do anything to tarnish that. And then the irony is, one of my castmates eventually it caught up to him, and he lost his job, and he didn't have a doctorate in anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, this is the same person that when he had the chance, he took his shots at me too. So I'm just like, I don't know, karma's a bitch, dude. Like, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I would never wish that upon anybody to lose their job, lose their livelihood. You know, he was at risk at one point of having his home foreclosed upon and things like that. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But it's just ironic what like a taste of the limelight will do to somebody.
You had
And I can switch on you
mentioned
in a second.
that you think that maybe this what led to you being a villain, but people also really like that you're open and you're honest and you're real and that you just don't come off as fake. And I'm wondering, does that translate into how you practice medicine? I know for me, like when I go into a room and there's a fat dog or an overweight pet, I'll say, "Hey, like Fluffy looks a little round." Are you like, "Hey, your dog's fat"?
I don't think I've ever, put it so bluntly.
Okay.
But I do let them know.
Yes,
I'm not doing anybody a favor by letting the pet get bigger and rounder and
for sure.
ultimately live a shorter life.
For
You know
sure.
what I mean? Or like same thing if I see some bad teeth, I'm just like, ooh, look at this. Obviously you never want to make somebody embarrassed,
No.
but um, I mean I am blunt, and those are the things that I feel have helped me in my career, is being able to just cut to the chase and tell people what maybe other people didn't want to say, or maybe something that's difficult to hear. Um, I don't know, and really, at the end of it, I think being a vet has given me a lot of confidence, even being on reality TV. Again, to be so bold and honest, because at the end of the day, I know that I'm speaking my truth. I'm being honest, and I'm doing good things in my life. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I feel like being a vet has been such a huge source of good karma for me. Like in this profession where we take care of animals, and they can't say anything to their owners, and we're the ones who have to speak up for the animal. Like doing that makes me feel really good about myself, and it makes me feel that you know nobody can really get me down
Yeah.
as a result.
I think that's beautiful. I mean, it is a really fulfilling career, and we are advocating for creatures that can't advocate for themselves. So I definitely understand what you mean. And you said something about being a vet has like given you confidence in going on reality TV. And I think it's interesting because people forget we meet a new stranger every 15 to 20 minutes for 10 hours a day as veterinarians. And so I know for me personally, it's like really helped with feeling confident in stressful situations and interpersonal skills and just meeting all different kinds of people, and being able to chat with anyone. So I can understand for sure where you're coming from. You had
Yeah.
mentioned that, or I read it online somewhere, that you treat exotic pets. What are some of the exotic pets that you see or have seen?
So living in Chicago, actually even before Chicago, I practiced in the suburbs of Chicago, and that's where I saw the majority of my exotic pets. So in my early career, say the first 3 years of my career, 60% of my practice was exotics.
Wow,
And that
60.
ranges 60, yeah. So that ranges from your regular bunnies and hamsters and guinea pigs, um, to birds, snakes, and then I was also the vet for a local zoo while in the suburbs. So then we had a pretty crazy collection. So we had mountain lions and wolves, elk, alligators, some like really big snakes, like Burmese python. There was one Burmese python, bald eagles, so big birds now too. So one of the things that really interested me about veterinary medicine was the ability to treat so many animals. I thought that was the coolest thing. Humans are like, all right, you're treating
One and
male
done.
and female. That's kind of like the two big varieties that you're dealing with. But I just thought it was so cool that somebody could be so knowledgeable that they could treat so many different species. So early in my career, that's exactly what I did. I went back and worked at the same clinic that I'd worked at in high school. So I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew these exotic animals were going to be there, and that was my goal all along. But as I kind of just got busier and things, it's over time. Now it's just dogs and cats. Here in
Yeah.
Miami, it's just dogs and cats. No one's bringing me their pet alligator here in
Not
Miami.
not yet. Maybe after this interview they might. That is interesting though. I do have a lot of owners and just people in general ask me, when you go to vet school, do you learn how to treat a python? And what I tell owners is, in order to pass your boards, you really should have the basic foundation of how to treat a dog, a cat, a horse, a cow, a pig, and like some chickens. But exotics is really I'm assuming you took a lot of like extracurriculars. How did you get that knowledge? Did you learn it through a mentor?
Yeah, so I took every single elective for exotics because again, at this stage, I knew where I wanted to work when I graduated, what kind of pets I'd be seeing there. Plus, the relationship between that clinic and the zoo has been for like decades. So, in high school, I'd go with the owner of the clinic to the zoo and see those pets. And then, it's funny because I remember once when I was like 15 or 16, there was this otter that we sedated, and I like had a picture with the otter, and I was like, "Oh, this is the coolest thing ever." And then once I graduated, I ended up sedating that same otter again to pull a tooth, and then we had the side by side pictures, and
Aw.
it's the same otter, like like it was like 10 years later, and like Cotter the otter, here I was again. So I knew I was going to be going into that. And Minnesota has a wonderful program for exotics. They have a ton of different electives for that. Um, I had an elective with the Minnesota Zoo. So there's two. There's the Minnesota Zoo, and then there's the Como Zoo, which is like a smaller zoo near the campus of the vet school. And there were these snow leopards there that for some reason, they just wouldn't mate. And it was my project to get them to mate, like figure out why they weren't mating, get them to mate. So again, if you want to do exotics in vet school, it's a good time because they offer those like structured learning opportunities. Whereas once you graduate, you have to get a mentor or like you're cracking open a textbook. I mean, you're still cracking open a textbook. There's just too much to
Yeah,
know.
you're
You have to
definitely watching
consult
a
those.
few YouTube videos.
Yeah, YouTube videos too.
Wait, I have to know, did the snow leopards mate?
They did mate.
All right.
They did mate.
Mission
So yeah, so
accomplished.
the reason they weren't mating is because snow leopards are primarily solitary creatures. So in the wild, they are on their own, doing their own thing. When the female's in heat, she like vocalizes or whatever, meets up with the male, they do their thing, and then
Out.
they're gone again. But in the zoo environment, they're like together, right? They're like in the same enclosure, and they just kind of get sick of each other, you know.
Yeah.
So they're just
This
because they like end up playing like siblings
right.
because they're just together all the time. So what we had to do was separate them, but leave. They shared like a wall of the enclosure, or like a netted wall. So once we saw that they were starting to like sniff around each other more, we could tell that she was coming into heat, and there's other signs too. And then we put them together, and then they mated.
Very smart.
But
I always joke around
they
that
didn't.
a healthy marriage is when your spouse goes on trips from time to time. Like my husband will go on work trips and then he comes home. I'm like, oh, I missed you. It's just like a snow leopard.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. My girlfriend just left for a bachelorette party earlier today, and you know, it, distance always makes the heart grow fonder,
There's a
right?
healthy level of separation. Would you say you're more of a dog or a cat person?
Dog person,
And if you had been
definitely.
in the pods and the other person was like, I don't like dogs or I don't like pets in general, would that have been a deal breaker for you?
Oh, that's absolute deal breaker, and that's one of the things that the producers were asking me too. It's funny that you ask that. Being a vet, they're like, "What if they don't like pets?" And you spend a lot of time with the producers too. It's not just like talking to the people in the pods. Then you're spending this one-on-one time with the producers with the cameras on, and they're asking you all kinds of stuff. But here's a little tip. So all that time you spend in there with the producers, and that's when they grab their sound bites. So you say something to a producer that you would never say to a person. You would never say this to another person, but they'll grab the sound bite and then they'll stick it in a conversation and make it look like you said it to a person. So that's one of the ways they do it. And you're just talking for hours, right? And they're asking you all kinds of questions. So nothing seems out of the ordinary because they're just asking you everything. And that's why.
Wow, that's very sneaky. I don't have any plans to go on reality TV, but if any listeners out there do, like that is a helpful tip. They're always
Yeah.
listening. All right, well before we wrap it up, if you could give any piece of advice to pet owners listening, what is one piece of advice you would give?
Pet owners,
Yes. It can be what
I
not to
tell
do, what to do.
I would say take your pet's dental health seriously because something like 75% of dogs under or over the age of 5 have periodontal disease. So, the disease is below the gum line. So don't think that just because you look at their teeth and there's not a rotting tooth in front of you doesn't mean that the teeth are all good. But also before we wrap up, I'd love to tell you about a project that I'm working on now. Maybe I should have mentioned this earlier, but this is something we've been spending a lot of time on and I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
my
please.
team, yeah, my team and I are creating a platform for pet owners to store their pets' medical records. So pet owners are notoriously bad about keeping their pets' records organized. Sometimes they're in PDFs. Sometimes they're scattered through a bunch of emails. A lot of the time they're in like a big folder. And as an urgent care vet, especially, the pet comes in, they're sick, they're vomiting, maybe they have pre-existing conditions like diabetes or Cushing's, and all of a sudden I have this big stack of records, and I'm looking through it, or my technician's looking through it, and 20 minutes later, we finally found what we needed to find.
That
So
is one of the most frustrating parts of our job, I will say, is having to catch up on, Fluffy's 12 years old. We're catching up on 12 years of medical records, and they're kind of hard to decipher. And, it takes like 5 minutes before you walk into the room. That is a challenge for us, for sure, as
what, what,
veterinarians.
well, I think you're really going to find Pepster interesting then. So what Pepster does is it organizes the pet's records chronologically, draws out all the important information, and creates instant reports. So from that stack of papers, now we have everything in order. We have a list of all the prescriptions. We have a list of all the lab work. We have a list of all the diagnoses, any treatments that have been done, all instantly and at a click. So for the pet owner, it's nice as an organizational tool, but as a
Mm-hmm.
veterinarian, so like say Fluffy comes in, now you can quickly look at the most important things. So this is a diabetic pet. What dose of insulin are you on? When was the last glucose curve? What are the previous prescriptions that have been made? Any comorbidities?
Is this up and running? Like, how could listeners and owners out there go and start using it for their pets' records?
So right now it's under development. So we're looking at a launch date of about March. Petster.ai is our website and also our handle on Instagram. So I would say give us a follow or go on the website and drop your email. We have thousands of people interested in this idea because it's so useful not for just the pet owner, but also for the veterinarian. It makes
Yes.
our job easier, and it is very useful for pet owners. And let me tell you about, that was the very core functionality, right? So now that we have all this information, we use a learning language model, AI, that takes all that pertinent info and then gives education points to the pet owner. So we can see that your pet's had ear infections. Now we'll tell you possible causes of ear infections, treatments for ear infections, um, underlying reasons your pet may have an ear infection, like allergies. Same thing with any prescription that's ever been made. You and I know what gabapentin is. You and I know what carprofen is, metronidazole, but pet owners don't know what that stuff is. So by putting their records into our system, they're going to be much more knowledgeable about what's being given to their pet and why.
I think that's great. I mean, any added ways we can educate our owners is really important, and it's true. We give them these medications, and they may have no idea exactly what they are for. Hopefully, they do, but a lot of times they don't, and so that's That's another added bonus, it sounds like, of Petster.
Yeah, yeah. So stay tuned for that. I'll definitely be sharing that with you. Um, it'd be great if you could even use it in your hospital when it's in beta,
Yeah.
just so we can get some feedback and, because we want this to be for vets and for pet owners to help them both.
I'd love to take her for a spin. I'll definitely give it a shot. Well, thank you so
Awesome.
much for coming on, Shake. I know it sounds like it was a little bit of some ups and downs after the show, but it sounds like you've landed on your feet and you're where you're meant to be in Miami and still practicing, which I love to hear. And I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to tell my story, and I'll be listening to your podcast.
You're so welcome.